So our vice chair, Mr. Ribble, is going to lead the meeting for us today.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm gonna charge him with a fine of another dinner for us.
There we go.
Next week, so we're meeting well.
He did a great job with that other one.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Oh, we have another person waiting to get in too, so we're good.
Okay, you wanna wait a sec?
Yeah, they're joined. Right.
Oh, good.
Hi there. And another, okay, we are well over our quorum now. We're in good shape.
Good. Okay, Sandy, I'm gonna go ahead and kick off the meeting. Do you wanna do roll call first?
Julie, you want to do roll calls because I know you keep track of it over there? Or actually, you want to just tell everyone, if you want to go around and everybody can just say their name, and that way Julie can keep track to make sure she has everyone.
Todd Thomas.
Welcome. Bill Ribble.
Michelle Storr. Melissa Hatter.
Ron Matthews.
Raymond Hall. Catherine Sayers.
Cindy. Okay. And online,
Mary Fisher,
thank you. Brent? Thank you.
Francis was on.
Lucinda?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we're all set to go? All right, first item of business is approval of the February 9th meeting agenda for today. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda as read?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda.
Okay, second. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion approved. Next is the approval of the minutes from January 12th meeting. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as read?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Okay, second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Okay, board member report. Mrs. Fisher, you're on.
okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I promise next time I will be there in person. I've just had a little bit of a busy schedule this week. So I guess my big news for you all is that we have hired a new superintendent, and he and his attorney and our board attorney are negotiating his contract and making plans for an onboarding with the governance team. His name is Christopher Bernier, in case you didn't know that. He has experience in Florida, 30 years in Orange County, and he also now is in Clark County, Nevada, Las Vegas, which is at least twice as large, if not more, as Lee County. And he is currently the chief of staff there. He's enthusiastic about coming back to Florida and has promised us that he has an onboarding plan for himself that he will review with us, and we will spend the next couple of months negotiating with him on his contract and also planning for his swearing in by May or at the latest June. Dr. Savage will be helping us with the transition, and of course he has his handle on what's happening now, which is a lot with the legislation that's pending in Tallahassee. Several of our board members visited Tallahassee last week and got to meet with one representative of Jenna Persons, Malika, and left information with the aides of the other representatives. So legislatively, we're looking at a lot of bills and issues that are moving forward this week in the legislature, talking about district board meetings and not paying board members, education choice scholarships, using public FEFP and public funding money to fund charters and private schools. There are employment organizations, Bright Future Scholarship, Individual Freedoms Act, which kind of changes things a bit more for us. K-12 personal evaluations, personnel evaluations and criteria. And then the one that's of interest only to Lee County is that they have, are trying to get on the ballot for this coming November to vote for an elected superintendent in Lee County. Now, Florida and Alabama are the only two states in the union that have elected superintendents. About 20 some odd of our districts in Florida have elected superintendents. They are smaller districts, and their rating by the state is essentially a C, whereas in the bigger counties with appointed superintendents like we have now, the performance is higher, A's and B's. So then there is some interest in local tax referendum requirements and placing cameras and microphones in each classroom, photo enforcement of school zone speed limits, which is a good thing. And I'll send this to Julie so that you can have the list and the link to check the movement with Florida as you move forward. So I had an opportunity to look at the suggestions for recommendations, and I really appreciated the focus on career and tech education, comprehensive mental health and comprehensive health education program. And it seemed like there were a few people who echoed that about the mental health and the physical comprehensive health education, which is necessary. So I'm anxious to hear some of the comments regarding those recommendations. And it's a pleasure to serve, and I will see you in person next month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Fisher?
I have a question. Did the lobbyists that the school district employed go to Tallahassee last week?
Was Carol Green up in Tallahassee last week?
Yes, our lobbyists, Ashley Staso and Carol Green, were both in Tallahassee last week. And they continue to give us updates and thoroughly, and that's what I will share with you when I forward this email from them to Julie.
Yeah, she's been up there since Monday night as well. She's still calling on elected officials up there. They're having the Tallahassee days this week, so she's on with them.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
That's Mr. Ribble who's speaking?
Yeah, Bill
Mr.
Ribble's
Ribble, yeah.
speaking, yeah. Yeah, Carol Green is up there. I heard some comments about her activities yesterday, all positive, meeting with some elected officials.
Yes, they do a really good job for us, and they keep us informed on a regular basis. So we do appreciate that. You know, we continue to look at the input we're getting from some members of the public regarding books in our school libraries, et cetera. And I don't know if any of you saw the news press today, but they literally had about 4 pages on this movement, not necessarily geared to Lee County, but we are in possession of the same list of books, and some of those books I read when I was in school, that was a long time ago. So we are continuing to be diligent about that and work with the groups to make sure that they know the process for having an exception to their child seeing any particular books. And we were trying to educate the public. The other thing I wanted to say about the elected superintendent is that the board is going to take a stand. We are preparing a letter to the public and to the legislative delegation against an elected superintendent, and we're going to provide all of the statistics and reasons why we don't support that. So stay tuned in November and be diligent when you go to the polls. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Ms. Fisher from the group?
Well, if the board is gonna be preparing a statement, is district staff gonna be working on that legislation? I'd like to know who from the district would be working on that statement.
Ms. Hall asked who would, oops, I'm muted, sorry. Ms. Hall asked who would be preparing that statement. Would it be board members or would it be district staff?
Well, our board attorney and the chair, Debbie Jordan, are working on that. And Ms. Patrica gave some statistics and information that she researched. So it's kind of of the board with the support of our attorney preparing the statement.
So you folks already voted, this is Bill Ribble again, you folks already voted to do this letter?
Yes, we did.
Okay. All right, first I heard that, but whatever,
Last meeting, it was this week.
okay.
Yes, it was last night.
My bad, after they hired my favorite candidate, I stood down.
You figured you'd be happy for a while, right?
Yeah. In fact, from a lot of the comments of the folks that I've been privy to, I think most of the people I know were very happy with the selection of the candidate. So no one approached me with any negative comments, which is surprising, because I usually hear negative comments, but at the Winkler Road meeting, most of the folks there were pretty well impressed with the candidate.
Good.
So, anyway.
Yes,
So we didn't violate sunshine, this was an open discussion on Winkler Road. We just happened to be in with another 88 people, so.
right, I understand.
Okay, next we're gonna get into why we're here tonight, the recommendations to the board. I understand Cindy, you had 4 recommendations.
And actually Brent sent one yesterday, I
Okay.
believe, and so I asked him to just bring it up since it was not included with the others, so I'll ask him to talk about that during the discussion.
Okay, well, Mrs. Fisher brought up the comments that we've all been concerned about with healthcare and what's happening in the district. So I'll just open up for comments about the 5 recommendations. Todd, if you want to go over yours first, as we haven't had a chance to see it.
It was Brent, sorry, I was pointing to the computer.
Oh,
Brent, if you wanted to talk about your recommendation?
Yeah, so my suggestion, so I work for Lead Health full-time, and one of the things that we're experiencing, and this is not unlike a lot of other industries, but we're probably particularly hard hit, is that we're having, staffing challenges. There's insufficient pool of staff that are coming in to replace the staff that are leaving healthcare. So my recommendation is, if we're going to make a recommendation to the board, to do a community needs assessment, particularly around the vocational and career education that's being offered by the system, and really make sure that, what's our 10-year plan, what's our 10-year need. I think we all recognize that the population within Lee County is going to continue to grow exponentially for the next 5-10 years. So what does that mean for, the industries that, our current students are going to be serving into? I just know for Lee Health, sterile processing, is one area that we have. Nursing is an area that we have. Some of them, they require only a high school education, but they require some technical skills. So it'd be a high school education plus a short program. There's not a lot of programs that are necessarily locally for a sterile processing tech. Those are the people that are critical, for cleaning the surgical instruments. It's a good job. It pays fairly decently, which requires a high school education. So what are the types of things that we can partner with, Lee County, and grow some of these programs so we can, fulfill the need for, the population growth that's going to be happening. So that's my suggestion.
So you're talking basically about partnering with the trades, with the trade schools?
Yeah.
Okay.
I really support the idea of doing a needs assessment in the community and maybe doing a crosswalk from the results of that needs assessment with what the state advocates for the various industries and how they support those in the local school districts, because I know the state has some guidance on the CTE programs that they believe are most important. So maybe we could do a needs assessment here locally and then do a crosswalk with what the state is advocating to see if there's some alignment there.
We may actually have that. I know the state does one every year. And I know that one of the things that never shows up when it is a need for marine tech. And we know that in our area that we do need that. So I believe it's CareerSource that does a local assessment to make sure that that gets on there. So let me check with Peggy at CareerSource. I mean, I think it's a great idea if it's not already being done, but I know we don't want to, survey people to death if they've already been asked the same question.
I think what Brent is sharing though is that, I don't know if the healthcare field is on that list, but it sounds like
I think the
it needs to
healthcare
be,
field
right?
is really covered in any county.
The healthcare field is actually on that list. I can find it. I have this year's list of the courses that the state will allow our career colleges to offer. It's based on that list, whether or not they will pay us back for those, basically, if they'll allow tuition payments for that. So I do have that list on my computer, so when we finish this discussion, I'll pull it up.
And excuse me, and there are some plans that we have presentation by Todd Everly and the directors of both of the tech colleges about some of the planning and the interaction with the workforce development people, et cetera. So there is something in the works in creating, expanding the offerings of the courses in response to the needs of the business, that the business community shared with us. So I know there's something happening. So that's a great idea, and we will follow up on that.
Thank you.
So these ideas are good, but unless this school district can get a handle on how to get the information out to parents and make parents aware of what we offer, they're not gonna be successful. These kids need to be told about these programs starting in middle school. I know one thing that was very impressive to me about Dr. Bernier is something I know that he started in Orange County because I just have friends that live there, but he started a high school fair for kids in middle school to go to. So the middle school kids could go to like a big arena, if you will, and see what the programs are that the high schools offer. And we don't have anything like that here. Because by the time these kids are in high school, if they're at the wrong high school and they're not enrolled in one of these schools where that program is, that ship has sailed. I mean, they don't have transportation, they don't have a ride. It has to start in middle school. But we have to have guidance counselors that can guide kids into these programs and say, hey, Bobby, I see you like working on cars. You know, you'd be great at this mechanic program. So unless we can get that piece in it, we're missing it.
Yeah, it's interesting, we've had that discussion. We actually had a black belt project around that. And we agree, and we do have open houses at high school. We have some high
They're
schools.
virtual
Well,
right now.
some of them are,
Yeah.
some are
Even the
not.
others, you walk
Some are
around,
not.
nobody's really.
Right,
Yeah.
some of the high schools do a really good job of promoting, but it's not district-wide that they all promote. So we absolutely agree that we need more on that. And I see Lucinda has a hand up.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. So I have a general question because this was some time ago, but when I was in middle school, we actually had a program in middle school where during the summer, anyone that was actually interested in working, like getting paid working, and like mine, the one I did was actually in a school. We would actually go in and help clean the school during the summer. I didn't know if we had something similar to that in our district.
Not that I know of.
It was in middle school. I remember being 13 years old actually at the time. So I don't know if there was something that we had, and I'll tell you that was a pretty changing experience for me because it really taught me early on, to work hard and having work ethic. And I think those are traits that we like to instill at a very early age. In middle school, it's that turning point sometimes for kids where they're learning and adapting quite a bit. So wasn't sure if that's something that maybe we can look into to see if there's any particular work program out there that that they can get involved in very early on?
Well, we do have Save Our Students, and I know they're expanding that this year.
Yeah.
Of course, things have been a little bit different the last year and a half or so due to the pandemic. So we are working diligently to make sure that we are improving our communications with parents and students. And definitely we do even offer some industry certifications now, beginning at the middle school level. So yes, that's also a very good point.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else at middle school. I know they do have a career. I need to go back and look at Rita's presentation. But I know they do have, they start the career discussions in middle school, and they used to have a required course. I believe they still have a required course where the kids do like a survey that gives them what their interests are, basically an interest survey. And then in high schools, we do have, on-the-job training, OJT, but that's more at the high school level. Getting into the high school, though, absolutely agree with Ms. Hall that we need to make sure that our kids at middle school get a broader view of what is available. We're also working on ways to have more kids do dual enrollment with our tech colleges. And that's I think that would be very beneficial as well. So, we're working on all those things, but, I hate to use COVID because COVID's not, the excuse for everything.
Right.
But in this case, COVID has had a really big impact because a lot of those courses, in 2020, when everything closed down, they couldn't get certifications completed because they had to be hands-on and everything was shut down. So they've had a little bit of a hard time coming back from it. But they have waiting lists in all of our CTE courses. We have a really robust advisory council for CTE at each of our high schools now. Lots of things going on that are getting us moving in that direction. I think more and more people are seeing the importance of it.
You know what I just thought of? So my prior job, I worked for Lee Health, and I was very involved with, I handled a lot of the high school education stuff for Lee Health, so I was in all the high schools on behalf of Lee Health. And Lee Health does an excellent job of getting into the high schools because we have Lee Health has a partnership with Lee County Schools.
Right.
So we would always go into the high schools and we would educate students. So if you've been to Bonita High School, Lee Health's named the stadium, and we have the whole, CNA program at Bonita High, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So Lee Health does an excellent job of getting in the high schools and telling the students what they can do. You can go to work for Lee Health, you can have a career here. That could start in middle school, but it wouldn't necessarily, maybe I'm thinking about it the wrong way. Maybe it's not the school district's responsibility. Maybe you get the businesses in the middle schools and have the businesses talk to the students.
I think it's definitely a partnership. We have junior achievement that comes in, and that helps. But again, they were out of the picture for a year. So getting all that back.
Because I never went to a middle school, but I went to the high schools all the time. And by the time you're in the high schools, the kids are already in the programs. But if you went to the middle schools and told the kids what the possibilities were in high school, that might be good.
Well, Ms. Hall, to your comment, I brought this up 5 years ago to two of our board members, Kathleen Morgan, Chris Patrica, because I was part of a movement in the Atlanta School District when I worked at UPS. And each company there adopted a school. UPS had the Thurgood Marshall Middle School, to your point, and we did all these things. We brought in Delta Airlines, the Holiday Inn, on and on and on. And I gave those ladies my book, which now is 18 years old, but the concept still works.
Yeah.
To your point, if you have businesses there, sometimes when it's a teacher's idea or it's a principal's idea, it's just okay. But when an outside business person comes in and they see that pilot stand there in his uniform, or a UPS executive, or any type of an executive, or any type of employee in uniform representing the company, it really says a lot. And we had you called it I think a high school fair. I don't know, we call it an open house or whatever, which were held on Saturdays. A lot of the parents showed up with their kids. It was really a happening. So that's something I still think our school district needs to do a better job. Apart, you bring up a great point, which is proven in other communities.
Well, I also have, when I made my comments, I totally supported the career and tech education portion. I felt that, and I think they do a really good job. But I also wanted to know, in terms of financial aid for the tech, is there financial aid out there that kids can apply for in, if they wanted to go? Is it the same as like Bright Futures? Do they
No.
have the same opportunities, or?
They have Pell Grants and some other,
So-
other opportunities, but not Bright Future. I don't think Bright Future.
Or scholarships? Is there opportunity?
There's always
there?
scholarships, but Bright Futures doesn't apply to technical.
But they do have Pell Grants, and that's how a lot of the students there.
But you would have to be fairly low income.
Yes.
So I'm just saying that if you want a kid whose parents maybe don't qualify for a Pell Grant, that's pretty expensive, and they might have to opt out. And since there is no Bright Futures money, it would probably be like a scenario they would have to go get a loan. I'm just saying that maybe that if you want individuals to go into those fields, because they're very needed, I totally feel that the college is not for everybody. And plus with the student debt, you want individuals to go and have as much opportunity as possible. And if we also incorporate that, all these factors can be incorporated into the comprehensive health education program through like life skills learning. You can take, and that's how kids get, if they go and get life skills somewhat in the classroom, whether it's through a home ec type situation or a shop situation, if they're talented in an area, that will show itself early on, but it has to start, this health education program that we're talking about has to start in the elementary school, and by the time they're in middle school, they have an idea already on what they're good at. And you're not trying to track it piecemeal. All of this stuff has to be very coordinated. And when I say coordinated, I mean, you have to be, and I think someone commented in the comments about communication and tracking. If it's embedded in the system, in utilizing a health education kind of approach, where guidance counselors, classroom teachers, health educators, the social workers, all, see that. And part of that is not just an interest, but it may be a kind of like an ASVAB for the military, where they do a little test and where the kids' skills are kind of like connected. And that follows the child through their whole life. And well before, they're in high school and they pick the wrong high school to go to. I'm just saying that this can all be coordinated together through the two programs we're working on. At least that's a thought.
You brought a good comment up about scholarship money being available. Bill Doberman with My Shower Door was kind of champion a new project to get the local businesses to buy into this thing. And he held some kind of career signing day.
event, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can incorporate job fairs for kids, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, I know we do career day with our parents and you bring, parents come in and do talk to the kids, but if this is something that kids can look forward to at certain levels in school, like in middle school, like, oh, it's the 7th grade, career day thing. And then they have information, and teachers have been facilitating this. Like, my son went to Island Coast for like a week, right, before he got into North. And he took a class for 1 week on automotive. And when he got there, the teacher had like a bunch of parts on the table. And the teacher asked them to name them, and he could name every one. And that to me is a flag right there for a teacher to say, but he's already a freshman. It probably would have been nice if he was like, maybe he kind of identified that a little bit before it was already in high school. That's my point.
Commenting on that, I think that's good, but it has to be something that's open to the parents as well. Because when you send just the kids down to something like that,
Right.
they're goofing off with their friends, they don't really care, they're not paying attention. You need the parent to be able to guide them, and the parents can't guide them if they don't know what's available.
But that testing that you were talking about, that doing like some kind of survey, that's like fairly simple. I mean, you could do that fairly easily, and it's not necessarily just about interest, it's about interest and skill set. And there's if kids can expect this and parents are aware that, hey, this assessment is coming up and it's not a test, this is where your interest lies, this is where your skills are. And it's identified a little bit earlier, I mean, maybe in 5th grade or
Well,
something
in
like that.
Germany, they do it by 6th grade, the teachers make that determination of which the 3 schools to go to. And it's the teachers that make the determination, and then it begins in 7th grade.
Well, I guess I just feel like maybe we're kind of.
Parents need to have an input
Right,
on it.
and
unlike
parents have
that,
to
but
be
yeah.
absolutely involved in it, but I think it can be something that doesn't have to be recreated. We kind of have tools like this, we just have to be maybe a little bit more creative in where we're placed, at the time we're placing them, and how we're doing it. I don't know, and I believe, I think I made comments on, the in-kind help is what my comment meant, was like looking for, maybe companies to help with grants, or businesses coming out and employing the kids. Right now, there's an employee shortage. And maybe places like Publix and Aldi or whatever might want to come into the schools and say, hey, we want to have a job fair because we really need help. And I think that would be a very mutually beneficial, setup, that if the schools helped with employment fairs.
Does, Cindy, do you know if the state still operates the Florida Shines platform? I'm trying to look right now, but I don't know. Florida Shines used to be like a platform where middle school students would, go through this whole series of assessments on their interests for skills and future careers and things like that.
It has a different name.
Okay.
I have to check with Rita, but I'm pretty sure that because I think it's a course that every 8th grader takes, but I need to double check with Rita.
Okay, other comments?
This is Brent again, can you hear me?
Sure.
Yes.
I love the discussion, it's a very good discussion. One thing I would tag onto is COVID has closed some doors, but I wouldn't fail to recognize that it's opened some doors as well. One example is right now, we're streaming 4 different locations on a video, participating in a meeting that 3 years ago, that wouldn't be happening. I can tell you, one of the things that we've done here at Lee Health, is we had to find ways to, let accrediting organizations into our facilities remotely when they couldn't physically be here. So we had a telemedicine card capability, and we really just ramped up our ability to enroll telemedicine cards. So now we can open up a WebEx anywhere within any of our facilities, with just a little bit of notice. So the job fair idea, a door would have been closed 3 years ago, letting little middle schoolers into the insides of a hospital. We probably wouldn't let middle schoolers into the ORs or our sterile processing areas. But, COVID has opened up our ability to put a video telemedicine card into those areas. And there's no reason why, as long as we are careful with patients in the background, there's no reason why we can't open up and tour some of our areas on the weekends when there's not patients in the areas. Let the middle schoolers see the OR, let them see sterile processing, let them see the pharmacy, things that we wouldn't be able to bring a gaggle of kids into, but we can bring a video camera into some of those places. So I realize COVID's closed some doors, but let's take advantage of the fact that everybody now knows how to Zoom, and it might open up some doors, and parents might be able to tour some of these jobs from the comfort of their living room without having to go to a job.
That's a great point. Great point.
Okay, any other comments? Any other thoughts?
Well, I did have a comment about funding, like in terms of funding the programs we're talking about, is there any funding, at least in the near future, in terms of for the mental health and the health education programs? There's like $0 allocated for that, or do we not know?
For mental health, there's nothing, well, ESSER, there's money through ESSER.
Right.
That's being used for that, but in terms of the legislature, none that I know of. Ms. Fisher? She's still there?
Yes, I think that there is some funding that came from some of the new rules that they passed about specific topics in mental health. So I think there is that, and the rest was the ESSER fund to hire licensed mental health therapists, et cetera.
It's statewide.
But we're looking at sustainability.
Right, but statewide, does anybody have a comprehensive health education program in place already? That has successfully implemented it in any county in Florida that you know of?
And not a real comprehensive health education K through 12 and beyond, like we are been advocating for the last several years. But each year we get a little bit more in the legislature, and now we have actually proposed that they take some of the recent laws and rules that they put into place and use it as part of the comprehensive health education rules that have existed for 30 years. So there is a comprehensive health education plan, and it's just a matter of getting people to use it. But once we focus a little bit more on some of our academics and not so much on social, emotional, and health learning, we lost a lot of that. So it's a work in progress, and frankly, there is some resistance from some of the parent groups about teaching anything like that in our public schools. So we continue to advocate.
Well, that's okay.
As far as the mental health in the schools, like my problem with it is, before we can expand on that, we have to do better with what we have. Like the new suicide prevention plan, it's very vague. It's not like a defined policy about what they're going to do. It's just, well, we'll create these guidelines and we'll create procedures and we'll create training, but none of it's created. So why create a policy for it, just saying that you're gonna create policy? It's not a suicide prevention policy if it's just talking about creating policies, which is all this new one is. And then it even goes on to say that, where is it here? Refer the student for future evaluation. Well, refer to who? And then that evaluation will be performed by a school mental health service provider prior to requesting or initiating an involuntary examination. Well, you're just saying that you're doing an examination, so how is that prior to doing one? You're already doing it. It's very vague, it's not concise, it's not an actual policy, because it just talks about creating ones and using ones that it's not telling you what they are. So we need to do better with what we have, lock it down, create like sound policies. Because, we'll do this, but it's not limited to this. Well, okay, what else could it include? I mean, it has to be uniform throughout the district. And I realize each student is individual, but how they're assessed and how it's handled has to be uniform. So before we can expand on anything, we've got to do a better job with what we have.
I don't know how many people got to watch one of the meetings, a recent board meetings. Ms. Fisher can probably speak to which one it was, or Ms. McClung, I don't remember, but there was a recent board meeting where the board was asking our mental health team some questions, and they ended up getting answers that we don't even have consistent training. So that to me is like, us making any type of recommendation here, we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. If we don't even have training on what we already have in place, to me, I couldn't get behind making any motion at this time. I was very alarmed with the lack of information
And
that
there's no oversight of what
that
the
they were
schools are
giving the
doing.
board last week. Ms. Fisher, can you tell us what meeting that was in?
I don't know offhand, but I'll look it up.
Okay.
I know Lori Brooks and her team presented, and part of the fact that there is ongoing training, but of course we're getting new directives almost weekly from the state, so trying to keep up with all that. And then of course the staffing issue is hitting us hard too, and I know that they actually weren't able to use some of the money they had for some of these therapists because there's just nobody applying for the jobs. And so, that is a concern, and we're trying to get together and be creative about ways that we can service people, train our teachers, keep our teachers, and, provide this information and support to kids and families. So,
It was the January 25th meeting.
Yeah, I thought Lori Brooks, the director, did an excellent job of making the case that she just doesn't have the staffing to address all these things. And that's why I was trying to push for some money
For money.
from the state.
Well,
because
we should be
that's what we
We
did,
should be handling it.
that's what my whole recommendation was about, just the mental health piece. I totally agree with everything that was said about the tech and mentoring and grooming the students in middle school. That's exactly right on target. It's proven to work in other communities around the country. But I was really, really overwhelmed when they got into the mental health issues. I thought those folks did a great job. When I left here, that was my whole theme. And when I found out Dr. Stork woke me up and said, well, yeah, they passed it, but they didn't put any money to it.
Well, and then it's like. we
Because
should
Carol
have-
Green didn't tell me we didn't get money. She was a cheerleader that we got this language. But what good is it without money? It's
Yeah,
all
we don't need the
words.
money.
So
We should
I
be
thought
staffing those
our
people.
committee
We
was
should be
gonna
voting on
ask
the
the
right
board
sources.
what it would cost.
Right, they would come up with a price that it would take, what dollar amount that they would
Did we
need.
get an answer on that?
On which?
Oh, I don't think we asked them that question, did we, Cindy?
Yeah, they did.
I thought at our last meeting,
That was part
what
of it.
we decided was that we were gonna ask the board what it would cost to put in some of these things.
Because that's not,
Right?
I do remember that.
the
I
initiative,
did.
the initiative of doing, of executing her
We should do
ask,
that.
but there wasn't anything about who to ask for money for.
Well, I think we
That-
need a
that we-
total.
That we assumed that the legislator's taking care of, which they're not. So
But
you're saying
can we
actually get a
ask that?
price
We can
tag.
certainly,
I
Yeah, we
thought at
asked.
our last meeting, we all voted to ask the board what it would cost. No?
I know we all discussed it, yeah.
We might, maybe we didn't vote.
Yeah, I
on
don't
it.
think
I don't think we voted on it, but I
We
think
didn't
we
vote
did
on
discuss it.
We don't vote to ask the board things, we ask Cindy and Lucia.
yeah,
I think
and
that's
I'm
what we
sorry,
voted.
somehow I missed that one, but I do remember that discussion about how much it would cost. And I can get with Lori about what it would cost to fully staff. I know that
To do what they
there was a lot of funding that was originally put into one of our ESSER grants to help with it, and the money was there, they just can't find the people to hire. So, I mean, the money wouldn't be there long term.
Right.
See, I could see if you lived in Alaska, you couldn't find the people to hire. I am struggling, being a former employer, that we can't get people down here to come down here. I just don't believe it.
Well, right now, part of it is they can make more money in private practice than they can in education. And
Teachers are moving.
Or they can make more money doing nothing, sitting at
Well,
home.
right now, the problem is the demand, what we're asking these teachers to do.
That's what I said, we shouldn't take on the mental health.
This thing is like, yeah, exactly,
Facilitate it.
exactly. It's a very stressful job now, between who's gonna show up on Zoom, who's not gonna show up. And we had a presentation on that last year. I was overwhelmed by the nonsense that goes on with the parents are both working, or one of the parents is working, they're going out a one-parent household, and there's no one there to encourage little Johnny or Susie to make their appointment at 9 o'clock in the morning to take their class. That was a big problem. And then when it goes to testing, they can't achieve because they don't have the skills, they don't have the knowledge.
So,
Go ahead.
I just have two things. The first one is, since we broached into teacher shortage, I was gonna bring this up when we were talking about CTE, but as we're working with community members on expanding CTE offerings, that's also something to be aware of, is we need to find the teachers to teach those subjects in the schools. I know several years ago, I did a tour of Bonita Springs High School when it first opened. And they have beautiful facilities for vocational training. But the problem was they couldn't find anybody to, like the HVAC program, at that time, they couldn't find anybody to teach in the program because they were all making plenty of money out in the field and they didn't need to come in and teach. And I know that they were trying to develop community partnerships where businesses might offer to lend some of their employees to come in and teach. But, you know, again, it's kind of a financial issue.
There's
Are
really
you doing
stuff
exit
too.
interviews to see why teachers are leaving, to see if it's an internal problem, like a leadership problem?
Learning behavior,
Yeah.
it's cheap
It's a-
and fed up with.
We do have a regular survey that goes out every year. But even just from conversations, okay, it's a variety of things. In some schools, it's leadership, but that's really not as prevalent as people make it sound. Because people will support each other within the school, or they'll change schools, because heaven knows, if you want to change schools, you know, we'll find a way to get you in a different school. We need teachers. But a lot of it is the stress over the past 2 years. You know, 2020 was crazy. And then we came into this coming year thinking, oh, it's gonna get better because everything dropped in June. And then all of a sudden, July, boom, oh, we're back to masks again. We're back to not having kids in the class because so many are out sick. Teachers are out sick. We don't have enough teachers to cover classes.
I mean, I don't blame them, I don't have the temperament to deal with kids all day.
But so it's not so much, it's not necessarily leadership, it's just the job itself is very difficult. And it went from this perception at the beginning of the pandemic, everybody was talking about what heroes teachers were, and now that's not always the same thing you're hearing. I mean, teachers are taking a real hit in public perception of, well, you're not doing your job, they're overworked, understaffed, and underpaid. And so it makes it really hard, even when you love kids, to do your job. And their mental health is suffering just as much as our students' mental health is suffering.
I do have a question about with increase in all the people moving to the state of Florida, it does increase revenue for school. Right, because there's more students, and then there's more people living here, and that means our taxes. Have they kind of get an assessment on how much they're expecting with all this influx of, properties and being valued at higher amounts?
Well, like
and-
last year, we had 5 students in Lee County transferred here, renting houses, they're not even buying, they transferred here just for their students to play football, because in the states they were in, football wasn't open.
Right.
So they came here to do that,
Right, so,
strictly for that, and,
but I think that the property value in the county has really increased, and that you would think that revenues, the revenue would be associated with that for, everything, at least
But they
governmental.
don't, but
Ms.
just
Fisher, do
because,
you want to address
I'm about to say,
how?
just because it increased, they don't increase the pay of the teachers, right? That would be nice if they did, but they don't.
Well, we have an increase in students, the state amount we get per student has barely increased, costs have increased, and so.
Right, with
we're
the
paying more.
inflation, exactly, so there has to be it has to be logical, do you know what I mean? Like, there has to be a logical, because no one can move here if they can't afford to pay rent or
Yeah, they
buy
say
a
that,
house.
they say that everywhere. They
No, I
say the
know,
same
I
thing in
know.
Atlanta, Philadelphia. I mean, they're out there in the morning freezing, scraping their windows and all this stuff, then they come down here to sunny Florida. I think, we learned something from everybody in these interviews. Each one of the candidates brought something to the table. Like I said, I was really pleased with the person that they selected, because that was I think I said, Cindy, this is my number 1, 2, and 3. I didn't even grade anyone else. But I thought the military Gall made a lot of good points when he talked about the perception of a veteran back in the 70s. When they came back from Vietnam, no one would talk to them. And the perception of a veteran now, and he said, we need to change that thinking with teachers. We need to change the perception. The old perception was, oh, they get off 3 months of the year, they only work 9 to 3, they got a plus job, they only have to deal with students, they don't have to worry about losing customers. That whole perception, I thought he was right on the money with changing that perception. That's a whole topic, like you said, for another night, but that is something that we need to take a look at.
Well, if you look online on Florida Department of Education, you can see all of the pay rates by district. And we, and all the districts in Florida, are amongst the highest paid for our department heads, our superintendent, our school board, but then our food workers, our teachers are amongst the lowest paid.
Actually, that's not quite the way it is. When you look at percentile of pay, we finally got our teachers up over the 50th percentile, which it took years to get there. Our superintendent was in the 15th percentile for pay in the state of Florida.
Because if you look at all the districts and just look at
Now,
them.
they did come up, they have come up some, but still, for the size of district, if you look at per student pay, it's very, very low for the size of our district. Now, we have written, as you know, they're working very, very diligently trying to get our transportation workers a better rate of pay, because honestly, right now, you can go to Publix and check out groceries and make, I think right now it's $17 an hour. You know, it's, yeah, so
Rather than dropping.
we're having a really hard time, yeah, and you don't have to have
Yeah, 'cause we look at
kids behind you or parents screaming at your bus stops, you know?
Let me ask this question.
What position?
Let me ask this with the bus drivers too. Do you guys see a lot of, like, you guys get people trained, they get their CDL and then they leave?
Indeed, because they could go drive for anyone at that point, because everybody's looking for drivers.
Well, that's the same thing with teachers to a certain extent, because I was one of those persons that went from private industry and came into teaching. And I left and went back to private industry because I have more respect for my abilities in private industry. So private industry today, in my opinion, respects what teachers bring. They bring quality, they bring pedagogy, and they also bring timeliness and skill sets. And private industries respect that, and teachers are bolting because of that. So I just have one other question. We were here to do recommendations, right?
Yes.
So I was just gonna step back. It sounds like one of the big recommendations is that we need uniformity, some type of training to spread the same message across the district, whether it's mental health or CTE. Am I correct in saying that?
I think that's pretty well versed.
It's a recommendation. 'Cause
Well, I just, at the last meeting, Cindy, I had asked if maybe we could have our recommendations aligned to the various items in the strategic plan. I think it's important for this committee, when they make recommendations, to address where in the strategic plan those recommendations are coming from, so that we can just continue to stay focused on the items in the strategic plan. So I think those are good ideas. It sounds like the whole committee is focused on health education and CTE recommendations and maybe the communication issue. I just would like to be sure that we as a committee are focusing on the strategic plan when we make the recommendation.
Good point.
That's tied to it?
The objectives are
Yeah, because the objective that I put was meet the academic and social emotional need of each student.
Yeah.
That was the strategic objective that I felt both of those came under. Now, if you all have a different opinion that it belongs to a different one, I don't know, but.
That's actually our overall objective,
Right.
which fits absolutely perfectly. We also have 5 major areas. So career and tech readiness is one of those areas, so we're definitely good there. Preparing academic success, the mental health piece fits in with academic success.
Absolutely.
And a future-ready workforce, it fits in there too, because our workforce needs to be mentally stable to be able to be prepared for whatever comes forward in the next year or 10 years.
Do you have these one-liners captured that we can vote on, or no? Or we need to
I
vote?
do not, because I haven't heard an actual, other than yours just now, which I didn't write down,
Okay, let's try to work on that, because we have
wording.
15 minutes to get this thing accomplished before we move to the next segment. Unless you wanna stay till 8:30, which.
So if I could just
Go ahead.
expand on that, an example would be when I was working in the school system, we had a social worker, who was trained in psychology and on mental health deficiencies, but she was always in the classroom. And that's my point to the uniformity of training and setting the standard. So you have the people with the skill sets doing the things that they're in the system to do.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
not
that
necessarily the
would be
training,
everybody.
it's do you have the staffing, that's a lot of it.
Correct.
So I wanna just bring that up, exactly what we're talking about staffing, because I have a colleague in the College of Education who's trained in youth mental health first aid, and it's been a passion of hers for many, many years. And she has, she developed a program to offer to teachers so they could recognize when students need to be referred or when students need mental health related services. It's not training teachers to be psychologists or any of that, it's just training teachers to be aware when there appears to be a need, the kind of training that Lori was saying, we just don't have the staff to do as much as we would like. And so if we were going to make a recommendation, I would like to include that we reach out to some of these community members who are trained and have offered to do this type of work at no cost in this case, as part of a partnership with the university, so that maybe we can utilize some of those.
That's a great point.
Aren't we already contracted with CPE, the mobile crisis unit, and they have all the resources for counseling, peer counseling?
Well, what I'm
These
hearing from
centers.
Lori is that there wasn't enough staff to do all the teacher trainings.
Right.
These types of trainings that I'm talking about are maybe just making teachers able to recognize behaviors that may need to be referred
I was gonna
to.
say, but they're referred to them, we don't have to handle it.
Correct.
So if we're already contracted with these people.
Right.
Can't we do something more with that contract with them?
But I think hers is a little bit more of maybe encouraging more partnerships. More of the private, like, you have a plethora of colleges here that would probably, their students need to have these experiences too. Interns can help, maybe not, maybe
We're
that's not-
already contracted with one, so why don't we build on that?
Are we using?
What are they
Well,
doing for us?
Partnerships with
The new
schools.
superintendent kind of touched on that in his
That-
interview.
That we just
About
expand
enhance-
that
About
partnership.
enhancing, exactly. He
We already
talked
have that
about-
partnership, what are we doing with it?
Yeah, he's talking about enhancing the partnership. He had some
But
really
maybe in different ways, not
specific
just-
ideas.
And I think what she says is really legitimate. I think that that's a legitimate, if there's somebody that's out there that has a skill set that are people who are in the position of saying they also need, I think that that should be something, their need should be acted on. And I think that, okay, so maybe we don't have to go out and necessarily hire somebody, but could we contract with them? And maybe they come up with some ideas on how to facilitate that in some other way, just in a creative way.
Well, it should be a referral source. We don't have to staff to handle the mental health aspect of the
But
students.
I thought I heard Dr. Stork say that you have skilled professionals that are willing to come in.
And help, right, all
Yeah,
without,
that's-
So
right,
and that was-
cascades out.
That goes back to the new superintendent with enhancing.
with in kind.
He's talking about
like
doing a
in
lot,
kind.
yeah, a lot of
In kind.
in-kind internships.
Yeah,
which
see,
is
and
what
that's
he
what it is,
said.
you have
And he said
graduate students
His
who can
point in
maybe
his
help with
interview, if
that.
you remember, he said that if you do that, you'll attract a lot more of these students to stay here as teachers because they're gonna feel comfortable with the experience they had actually working in the environment here at the district.
Well, the mental health and like neurology for the ADOS testing for the autism screening, John Hopkins and St. Pete, they're on because of their residents do the testing now. It's a 3-year wait list. Like, those students are so overwhelmed, they have a 3-year wait list just to test these students for autism. Because I needed that testing, I had to wait 9 months to get it. I found CPE on my own, they had me in and my child would be tested within 2 weeks, after waiting 9 months. The school offered no assistance with it, the district didn't, the school was aware of what was going on. We needed this,
but
it's an 8th grader or 9th grader, at the time it was 8th grade when we were starting it, but we waited 9 months for it. And that's what I'm saying, like, we're not even doing like the basic stuff like that, like was affecting a learning,
Mhm.
It's a gifted student, so it wasn't seen as critical. You know what I mean? Because the behavior, like the teacher always said, oh, I forget there's a 504 because they're so well behaved. Right, so because they're a gifted student, well behaved, you don't think like they need these extra services, and they do. So why, if we already have licensed psychiatrists on site, why are students having to wait 9+ months to get tested?
Does every school have
For
a
stuff like that.
psychiatrist or a
No.
psychologist on site?
No, we're trying to hire school psychologists every day. We're short-staffed there as
I'm
well.
gonna say that you probably have some for the whole district, but I mean,
Right.
they're probably going to like all the schools, you know, so.
Okay, I hate to
Okay,
cut this
no,
off,
no,
we gotta
we-
get back to
we-
our
we-
recommendation.
so-
We're not
Yeah,
gonna-
we need to go back.
So
Okay,
let me see if I've captured
There you
what
go.
I think I heard, but I won't swear that I did. So around mental health, there is a recommendation to explore expanding partnerships with FGCU and other community and business partners to provide additional aligned training to all instructional staff.
No, I don't agree with that. I don't think they should have to provide the training to staff. I think they should be joining a partnership with
In-kind.
us for us to
I thought
refer
we
people
used
to
the word
them.
in-kind services, no?
We refer people to them,
I
right?
was talking about the training of the staff.
That is what Michelle was saying,
Because
that
we have-
they don't have the training to recognize when a child needs to be referred.
Correct,
Right.
and in
That's
our
important.
teacher education program, the students are learning youth mental health first aid, they're learning suicide prevention and awareness, they're learning, hold on a second, because I just asked her. And they're learning one for managing stress, so for teachers managing stress, to be able to, maintain classroom behaviors, all those things we know about. So I think the training piece could happen very easily because we already have people who are qualified to do those trainings, who are willing to do those trainings. And that was something I remember Lori mentioning, that just not having the staff to be able to, get that first line of training in place for teachers, among all the other things they have to do.
Okay,
I
so
would
that's,
agree with, I
that,
think that's training to recognize it, to then refer to the appropriate party.
That is
Right.
correct.
I don't think we should be.
That's exactly what I'm talking
That's
about, I'm not
exactly-
talking about.
But
Doing-
can you
she
read
should
that
provide
again,
Sorry.
Sandy?
Yeah, let me get that last.
Let's finish this one, then we'll do the next one.
That's a great start. And to Dr. Abada's point, those same professionals can cascade it out virtually as well, which means it reaches more of the staff and the teachers, et cetera.
Okay,
Training
so-
videos, maybe if they just set up some videos, make the videos the professionals that we contract with.
So we recommend exploring expanding partnerships with FGCU and other community and business partners to provide additional aligned training to all instructional staff. Training would be focused on helping staff to recognize, I'm trying to think of the right word,
I would,
Early warning signs, I think is what they called it in like the suicide prevention.
I mean, the
Early indicators.
the certification that my colleague has is youth mental health first aid, so it's training teachers.
Yeah, we gotta get
to
mental health, the word
recognize-
mental health has to go in,
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I think so too.
to recognize
youth
Maybe
mental health.
youth
first
mental
aid.
health crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say. And I don't know that I would use the word crisis because it gets, the
Mental
point
health
is that
issues.
it's
Well, I
recognized
did the
before
early
it's a
warning
crisis.
sign.
You're trying to avoid it to be a crisis,
Correct.
you wanna identify it
Mental
before it gets
health
to that
issues.
point.
Youth mental
It's-
health
The
Needs, or
the
flags
proper
maybe?
term in the training is
Or-
youth mental health first aid. Teachers are trained in youth mental health first aid.
to identify.
First aid, just like if you
All right.
had a medical
I like
issue, you needed a
To
Band-Aid kind of
identify the
thing.
need
The
for a
first thing.
referral to services.
Or if it looks like you broke your leg, you would refer the person to a doctor, not
Makes sense to
try and
me,
treat their.
So maybe just the training would be focused on youth mental health first aid?
yes.
I would say so, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now, are we gonna do one for the career tech?
Yes, I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so before you go on, do you want to take a vote on this one
Yeah,
first?
let's,
Do we still have a quorum? No,
We
no.
do,
Why is
yeah, I
there
just
a-
counted people.
Yeah, we have to count people.
Yeah, I was counting, make sure we had 8, so.
What do we have? Please, I didn't know if we still had one.
So, we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, oh, wait, we did
Yeah,
have 8.
Rainey left.
Oh,
Right.
no, it wasn't Rainey that left, I
Are
already.
they still
not
there?
there.
Then he left.
Are they gone?
There's 5
Is
there.
it wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, but Brent is there twice and
Yeah.
Tamara's there
There's
twice.
4 of us. Yeah, there's only 4.
We have 8.
One's Julie,
6, 7, 8.
one's Julie,
Yeah.
So we have 8.
there's
3.
2,
1, 2, 3.
no, Julie doesn't count, so there's 2 there, right?
Myself, Tamar, and Brent.
There's 3 of us.
Oh, I'm sorry, tomorrow,
Is Brent on there twice?
thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, Brent's on there twice, okay, so there's 3 of you, okay.
And there's 5 of us, right?
Yes, because this,
So we have eight.
okay, so we're good, we have 8. I was gonna say, I know I counted 8 just a minute ago, because I was making sure. Okay, there we go.
So we can
It
vote?
was Lucinda that I didn't see, I was like, I had in my head that.
Okay, who wants to make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor, saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, ayes have it.
Okay, so there's the first one.
Can you read it again?
I would be happy to. The committee recommends exploring expanding partnerships with FGCU and other community and business partners to provide additional aligned training to all instructional staff. The training would be focused on youth mental health first aid.
Yes,
Yes,
Perfect.
that's excellent.
excellent.
Good job, guys.
Okay, now we need one for the career tech education, CTE.
I think I heard a needs analysis come up.
Yep.
So as an example, you have very successful high schools at certain things. I'll give an example with Carl Burnside at Dunbar.
Love that man, yeah.
Dunbar is winning across the board in terms of technology and manufacturing. The students in the programs, they're going out winning worldwide. So could there be a study from the standpoint to see what the success
program.
is from that side and maybe cascade it out to other schools? Because for example, you look at East Lee County, they have a fire academy, a police academy, a full welding shop, and they got a complete tech pep boy shop in the high school, but they don't have staff. So maybe there's some things that you see successfully going at other schools that you can possibly take and use as a template with others. So that's the thought.
Okay, so we need to get the word assessment in there, is that what we're saying, Todd?
Needs analysis.
Needs assessment.
Needs assessment.
So-
How about this,
So
how
help
about
me to
this?
clarify, because I'm hearing 2 different things. I heard a needs analysis of the community, and then I'm hearing what's being successful at the high schools, which to me may be different.
I think just the structure, you're
Well,
talking about like how they
and
see
what about-
what they're doing, right?
What about for the student, what the student might need? You know, like the needs of the students and how
Well,
to,
that
how
would
to
come
get.
under with the community though, that would, they're part of the
A needs
community,
assessment
wouldn't
is
it?
gonna, a needs assessment is
It's gonna-
going to address all the stakeholders. So
Right.
you're
Is
gonna
it
talk
all,
to the
is
schools,
it
you're
all
gonna talk
bundled
to
up in the
community.
school?
Well, that would depend on what your needs assessment covers. If your needs
Right.
assessment is looking to our
For
community
employers.
to see, to our employers to see what types of positions, what types of skilled workers do you need, that doesn't really look at the students. That looks at what do the employers need.
We need to look at what the students want, because they're the ones who are gonna be taking the classes.
Well, can't we
now.
capture both groups in the needs assessment?
Yeah, needs
That's
Why don't we just
fine.
name them both?
Well, make it like a comprehensive needs assessment, like where on all sides, because if, like you're saying, I think the employer is gonna be a very valuable stakeholder
Absolutely.
for the whole, for the end
For the
result.
reasons why we, yeah.
Right,
reasons
that's
we
the end
need it.
result, right,
Right.
so you can have kids have all these interests and needs and skills, but they need the job, so
Yes,
I think both should be part of it, but that's a pretty,
I think
pretty
if a
big-
student's more concerned about, what is it I think I wanna be, and that's the
Right.
class I wanna take, they don't care about the local company that's willing to give them a job when they get out. Right at the moment, not all of them, they're thinking,
well,
I'm gonna go to college after this, or I'm not, and this is what I wanna take for classes, and then that's it.
Right.
And then you also have the aspect is we have to offer more of the specific, specialized classes at more of the schools. Because if your school has the program that is more geared and aligned with what my child wants to do, but all their friends are gonna go to this school, guess which they're gonna pick? They're not gonna pick the one that has the field that they wanna go in, they're gonna pick where everybody else is going.
But unfortunately, we
You
don't have the
can't-
funding
that's-
to do multiple.
right, and you already have, like, you have specific things in certain schools already. You already have like a skill set of teachers and equipment in a school, so let's work with, maybe within that parameter.
And letting parents know
Lucinda,
that,
did
because
you
I don't
want
know
to say
which
something?
schools offer what,
She was,
and I have a kid who's graduating
no,
this year.
okay.
And I was never told which
I thought it
schools
was
offer
her
what
hand.
programs when they were going into high school.
I'm sorry, was there someone on Zoom with Cinda or Tamar?
I mean, the only thing that I wanted to add is I think that, the analysis is good just to get an idea of like in our area, what type of positions are really in demand. I think it's useful to have that knowledge so we know what businesses to partner with. But to the same extent, I kind of go back to trying to reach kids as early as possible. So I would say something to the extent of early implementation of learning experiences, maybe starting at the middle school level, whether that's, an after-school program. I think that might even coincide with mental well-being, having something to do after school instead of just going home and being on an iPad or having to do homework. Again, I know that at middle school they're limited. I think that I was reading on the child labor laws, like they can only work a certain amount of hours a week, can't be hazardous, and there has to be parental consent. But some type of after school implementation program, I mean, it could be having a volunteer, a business volunteer coming to the school, a couple days a week, or it's like a program, like they do currently for track or any of the other programs that middle schoolers have, but something that would kind of start to engage them early on. And it was funny because I actually had my daughter here and her friend, and I was asking them, I'm like, hey, would you guys work after school if you were getting paid for it? And they were like, yeah, I can go get my nails done, or I can go do this, or I can go do that. I'd love to earn some money. But, I think what mental well-being is also keeping our kids active. And so maybe we can catch them early on with different businesses, giving them the opportunity to earn money and start.
I agree with that, I agree that the age is right.
Absolutely.
No,
I think middle school is good, but then again, we need more funding to implement after-school programs.
Well,
Okay,
you
so we need
can
to-
partner though with Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec have some after-school programs already in place that utilize schools
They just
already.
still need the school administration to
Oh, sure.
line it up, to
Absolutely.
be
That's not-
oversight of
that's-
it.
I think after-school programs are a great place to get kids interested in being counselors in a Parks and Rec program. That's a whole career set that the youth can, there's
If
so
it's
many.
not on site, then you have to provide the transportation for them.
Well, no, it's on site, after-school
A lot
program
of after-school programs, they have their kids bused directly
to the
for all of the transportation.
patients,
Right.
exactly. But, well,
Sandy, do you have a recommendation for us? Did you capture some keywords?
I have like 3 different recommendations out of that.
Everybody's making a recommendation speech.
Yeah.
I like the assessment analysis piece.
Okay,
so I do too. I mean, does everybody else agree with
Of
that, or?
students and local businesses, or
Yes.
both?
Yes.
yeah, so both, we should say that, both.
And I think I still go back to what she said with the partnerships.
Yes.
That we shouldn't just think of other educational institutions, we should be looking at, utilizing Parks and Rec programs, utilizing hospitals, utilizing schools for, mentoring, maybe services like training kids, I
We
mean,
just say opening up partnerships in the community.
yes.
That's a big broad,
Homes, I mean, there's so many.
there's
so
all
many
kinds of
things.
partnerships you can have.
Yeah,
We sit here and name them all, we'll be here till midnight.
I can name a couple. That's why I go back to Dunbar, because they have a partnership with Microsoft, they have a partnership with Adobe, they have a partnership with CompTIA. So,
Yeah,
and they keep their teachers, and the students are coming from all over the county, so everything's embedded right there for
Right.
some type of study or assessment.
So,
Okay, that's good.
so I understand what you want to know from the employers. You want to know basically what are the skill sets that they need in their employees. Tell me again exactly what you want to know from the students.
What their interests
What
are,
their
right?
interests are, and what their skill sets are. Is there a way to identify
Yeah,
what
Well, they're not
what
gonna have
they're good
skill
at?
sets in the middle school, they're looking to learn skill sets. So that's what their passion is, what their interest is.
But can't we see like what they would be strong at?
Well, I'm just saying, if they're a very good, solid math student, they might like accounting, I don't know, just.
maybe something they don't know that they have, but
Right.
when you put it together and do the
In a
assessment
test, in an assessment.
of
like
what
a-
their strengths are.
I don't think we should ask the students in the needs assessment if you're talking about middle school students, because earlier in our conversations, we were talking about the fact that the middle school students need to be made aware of what some of these things are. I think they might not be in a place to be able to articulate the specific things that they would like to do that we could align with skills and vocations. I think that it might be beneficial though, to take a look at what is currently already being offered in the high schools, in addition to talking to the community partners about what they need for skills for their employees. I mean, if we word the recommendation to do a comprehensive needs assessment, then the understanding is that we are going to ask all stakeholders. I just am not sure that asking middle school students, what is it that you're interested in that you would like to do as a career, is going to yield very valuable information, because they may not be at a point where they can articulate that.
But there is a way to do a survey that you can be given a choice, like, you know, you take those surveys that, you know, you do those, I've done
You would
those.
be good at this.
Yeah,
Well,
I
it
don't
might
wanna
not be- it
interrupt
might
you,
not
but I
say,
will
oh,
say that
do you
the
wanna
state
be a
of Florida already
machinist?
has those. The state
Right.
of Florida already has those.
So they already
I
have
don't
them.
know if they are, but I'm saying
That's, I think that's
you know,
the first
they
thing we
already-
need to
right, if
find
we're
out
duplicating,
is what's happening already in the middle
Exactly.
school in terms of that. One thing I did hear earlier that might be a recommendation that would precede this one was I heard something around suggesting that there is a campaign around a greater awareness of what is offered at our high schools to middle school students. So there might be a recommendation there
I
somewhere.
think we also need to ask their interest, because it's them and it's their futures, and if we don't ask them,
No,
what if they would be more likely to participate? And one of the ones that isn't doing as strong, if we bring in something else instead to replace that, because there's more of a desire for it.
I don't think we were saying don't do that. I think we were saying let's wait and see what we're already doing, because it's possible that's already happening in middle schools. In terms of those.
I've had two kids recently in
I don't
middle
think
school, and
There used to be a career class in every middle school, and I really don't know if it's still there or not.
But I think that you can identify what you're interested in if the questions in these assessments are done like in a certain way. It says like, oh, if you had a choice between going for a walk in nature or
well, Dr. Stork said they already have that, so our
Right.
recommendation, it should be that those are being
evaluated.
That's what I want to find out, are they being
Utilized.
used? That's what I want to find out, because
Okay,
I know they were, several years ago, I don't know if
But if
they
we're
still are.
doing these assessments, what's happening to the data?
No, they're being
Well, that's what
utilized
Cindy
to
said she
use
has to find out.
Okay,
So let's
But
find
she
out, and
thinks
I will
it's
bring that
already
back to our
being
next
done.
meeting, because I'll
Correct.
check with Rita.
because if that's already being done, that'd be great.
Well, that's what we gotta find out. Were we recommending something that's
So
already,
then, that's already being
but if
done.
it's already been being done, somebody you said,
But
use
just
the
because
word
they have it, doesn't mean they're
communication.
using it.
I
Maybe
think
it's
it's
not being-
important, you just hit it right on the
Yeah, I
head
don't think
though.
it's being
Even if it
communicated
is already
because,
being done, a comprehensive needs assessment will tell us it's already being done, but nobody really knows about it.
Yeah, because
So
it's
there's
not
your
being
weakness right
communicated.
there.
Okay.
I mean, it's
So
hard
we
to
can
make a
still go on
recommendation
this,
when we don't
that could
even
be
know.
still one of our objectives
yes.
in this needs assessment.
So
We'll
let's talk.
figure it out, we'll find out.
You want to recommend deploying a comprehensive needs assessment to determine what?
Determine what is currently being offered for CTE programs, and whether our stakeholders are aware of those offerings.
Okay, because
Is
I
it
think
being
we know what's
communicated?
currently being offered. We don't really need to do an assessment for that because we know, because we have the curriculum. But what we don't know is, do people know about it? So
And what is the
to
communication
determine
piece?
awareness.
We ought to evaluate how well it's being communicated. because
Yeah,
It's
and
not
I
like
was
anybody
graduating, I was never told it was at the different high schools before she was going into one.
Yeah, you know, I know I know my children took a career class, but I just don't know if
I
they,
think a parent survey included in that needs assessment might be a good.
right, and I think parents, I think that's an excellent.
You ready to read out recommendation?
Yeah, I
Because it's
will.
almost midnight.
Right now,
Don't scare me.
recommend deploying a comprehensive needs assessment to determine awareness of current CTE offerings in our high schools.
Yes, because we can't make any assumption that there is some kind of lack of offerings when we don't even know. What I'm hearing is that people don't even know what is being offered in the community. So we can't say, oh, you're not offering X, Y, Z, or you're not doing this. We don't know that.
Right. So I think that's one recommendation that I think that makes sense. I don't think that that includes what you were talking about, employer needs.
Right.
Again, we have a survey from the state, but I don't know that we have a local survey. But if that might be a separate one, to
Well, let's move
determine.
on with this one and we'll do the next one. How's that?
Okay, so let's go this
Everyone
one.
agree to that or not?
Yeah,
Okay, so we need a motion.
okay, so do you want me to read it again?
Yeah, read it.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So the committee recommends deploying a comprehensive assessment to determine awareness of current CTE high school offerings.
Yeah, but I also think that we need to include in that, like, their personal, like, that we've assessed their interests, maybe?
That's gonna be something
Is that a separate one?
separate.
Isn't that gonna be
then I'm
embedded
fine.
in the,
Yeah, I know. I think that,
But an assessment of it, of who's gonna answer that, parents and students?
students.
Because just because you're making the students aware doesn't mean parents are being made aware.
So that's up to you guys. You say,
It has to
I
be
think
both.
parents,
Parents.
I think the communication piece is the first thing, right? I think this, what
Yes.
you just read is going to tell us, do people even know what currently exists?
right,
What I'm hearing is probably not, but we don't know that because we haven't
Right.
actually asked anyone.
Right, but who are we
So who do you
gonna
wanna
ask?
ask?
Students.
and we're asking this to parents and students.
students and
Yes.
parents? Okay. Okay, so recommend deploying
I think we could ask the community too.
a
That would be
survey,
maybe in the next
Ooh.
one.
survey
Yeah, I thought we were gonna do the next
to
one.
determine
Yeah.
student and parent awareness of current high school CTE offerings.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
All
I
right, do we
cannot
wanna say
read mine
awareness or
straight.
knowledge? They might be aware of it, but they really need to know about it.
Understanding of, yeah.
Or, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
It's one that
What word do you want?
I think understanding.
understanding
Understanding.
of what it does and what it offers. That's
Yeah.
the point.
Okay, I'll read it one more time. Okay, recommend deployment of a survey to determine student and parent understanding of current high school CTE offerings.
I think that's good,
I'll make the motion.
okay.
So we backed off from needs assessment because you're just using language survey, which is fine with me, I just wanted,
Well, because if you're asking for understanding, that's not a need assessment, right?
right, a needs assessment was much more comprehensive.
Yes, which I think is the next step from what I was
That's the
hearing.
next step.
Yeah,
We
okay.
Okay.
Kind of peel it back a little bit.
Okay, Ms. Hutter made the motion, we need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, Todd, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh, I'm so
Opposed?
sorry. I just-
Lucinda, I couldn't
Ayes-
see, and
Ayes
Brent,
have it.
I
and Brent, was yours also an aye?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. We need one more, correct?
Well, we
Yeah, I think
can.
we should, yeah.
Well, yeah, let's finish this.
Okay, so we've got one more around a needs assessment. Are you looking at employers?
Yes.
Or are you looking at students?
Employers. Kind of touched on the students in the
The
last.
students was the last one, right?
With knowledge.
No, I think this is both.
No, that was just an awareness of it.
Right, this is
It
no
wasn't the
awareness.
assessment that we were talking about
So are we
doing
gonna
to
do
see what
both?
their strengths are, to where to refer them to go.
And weren't we gonna wait and see what's already being done before we do that with students? Find out if that's already being done
Can we come back to this?
So we need to know if it's being done, yeah.
Check on that.
Well, we have to,
with Rita Davis, she'll know, because she knows what the curriculum
we'll
is.
have to do the recommendations because of the timing involved, right?
Right.
Because this committee will end in May, so like we need to
Make
have
some
some recommendations in.
So if we bring it back in March, we find out what's being offered there, we can make a recommendation in March.
Okay, do we want to do one more, or do we want to,
I think we should do one more.
On what?
well,
With the
Go on.
local community,
On
Well,
the,
the immunity assessment.
on the employer or the companies or,
Okay, that was the other one that we know we have a state survey, but we're
Okay.
not sure if we have the local
So we
survey,
need
so I
to
was
find
gonna
out
check
on
with
that,
Career
yeah,
Source
so
on
we need
that.
to check on that one.
So if I check on those two, we can come back in March and determine if we need to do assessments on
Yeah.
those.
Do we need to do anything about funding or money? Not yet. Okay.
Okay, is that it on this? We got 2 minutes to finish.
Oh, jeez.
Cindy, are you got everything captured, you need to make?
I believe so, thank you.
Okay, all right, you're on next, Cindy. Future topics.
Alrighty, so, what would you like to, the next thing that topic that had come up was asking about hearing from HR around workforce. Is that still a topic that you would like to hear? And if so, I'll get with HR and
about what?
HR, the workforce.
Yeah,
what they're
teachers,
doing.
bus drivers.
Yeah.
We kind of touched on that tonight about why
Right.
can't we get people to work here?
But it's not just here.
It's not just
So,
here.
and we have a statutory requirement to have a district internal auditor who left back in a year ago, last February, and we haven't even advertised for it yet. So I mean, if we're not advertising it, we can't fill those positions, even though they're a statutory requirement for us.
Well,
to
they're working
fill.
with RSM on that. We
But
do have,
that was the board,
right,
but the district has to have one too.
we now have a director of internal audit, that's Mike Gatewood. That was,
So that's our internal auditor.
I don't think she's still on
She's
there.
on.
She had to leave, she had a
Okay.
meeting.
Okay, so we're gonna do
I'll have to
HR
double check on
next?
that, I believe he is.
So when would HR come?
They gonna come next month?
I don't know, I have to check and see if they have someone available. They
Okay.
did just do a presentation to the board yesterday, Monday, one day this week, I don't know, I can't keep up with the days. So I know they have a presentation that they could present and answer questions. It's just a matter if they have someone available to do that, so I'll check with Rob tomorrow.
Okay, any other suggestions for future topics? Okay, now let's go to, there's, no one here from the public to speak, I take it? Good to the order, any other comments?
Did anyone else have a future topic on I see Lucinda's hand up, but I don't know if it's a new one or a.
No, it was from a little while ago when you were looking into different things. I was going to see if you could look into us seeing if we had any career readiness programs at the middle school or any after-school programs at the middle school level that would help us with the conversations we had with implementation of the technical programs.
Thank you, yeah, I'll get Rita to give me an update, and actually I'll go back and look at her presentation, because it might be in there, and I just don't remember, but I'll talk to her as well. But thank you, I'll definitely check on that.
Okay, any other comments for good of the order? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
All right, thank you, everybody. Everybody on Zoom, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys, we'll see you next month.
Have a good night.
You all too. Thanks, great
Thanks, everybody, for
conversation.
hanging in there so we could vote.
We needed to hang around for four.
The Right Future Scholarship, they have to do so many hours like community service too, right? So then some of the high schoolers do stuff with the middle schoolers to earn some of those hours.
Yeah, I wanna talk to Bill Dodman about that shower door, see, because he was kind of championing this thing.
Yeah, he has a real good
Everybody have a good evening.
relationship with South High. They do a lot.
Yeah, he did a good job with that.
Yeah, he did.
And I know, I can't remember his name right now, the My Pillow guy. He does a lot of community-based things as well.
Okay,
He's real big advocate and does a lot with.
what's his name?
Can't remember, I'll have to ask my husband, because he does a lot with Justin's Place, which is part of St. Matthew's